Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're jumping back into our talks on Banner of War with a wild finale that's given us a crazy teaser as far as what could be the next chapter for the Titan Hulk. So let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch your spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, when we jump back in, we really hit the ground running here, because in our last couple of talks, we'd seen how the gamma explosion that came from the Starship Hulk had let off this crazy amount of gamma energy that was powerful enough to turn a god into a Hulk, which upped the stakes on Thor's end by causing him to Hulk out. But also with Odin helping Banner, he had allowed the Hulk to live Mjolnir, which from there once again gave us the Thored out Hulk versus the Hulked out Thor. And right away we were given a tease with the first clash from these two, with the first hit from the both of them just devastating the planet that they were on. And it's from this moment going into the conclusion where we're given this narration from the Watcher, who starts this off with saying that the question is answered at last, the question that's been asked for decades, and if the universe survives this day, then it's something that'll be debated for centuries to come. And really this is one of those things that makes more sense when we get that answer later on in the story, closer towards the end of this conclusion. But also with the way that this is set up, with us having Hulked out Thor versus Thored out Hulk, it'll make you think like, okay, like how could we say who would really win if both these guys aren't their original selves and this isn't like a classic match between Savage Hulk and Thor Odinson? Which, by the way, say what you want about some of these old matches, but they definitely had their moments, like the time in Defenders issue 10 when the Hulk grabbed Thor's cape and he yeeked it so hard that Thor got spun and drilled into the ground. Like, to do that, it takes a certain level of disrespect to pull that off. And regardless of how the fight ends, it's moments like this that people still remember. And you can't get back up acting like that didn't just happen. But in this matchup, with them having each other's upgrades, there's a few layers that Donny Cates uses in order to flip this whole thing on its head. And the first part is them being given each other's upgrade, allowing the Hulk to fight with Mjolnir and leaving Thor driven by rage and just fighting with his bare hands, which on paper, it sounds like it's taking away the advantage that one would have over the other, because normally the Hulk couldn't lift Mjolnir. So with giving the two of them a taste of each other's power, and it's almost like Donny Cates is neutralizing the playing field in order to emphasize what is truly different about these two guys. Because at their core, this is still Thor, the god of thunder, the Allfather, versus the Hulk, the strongest one there is, the World Breaker. And really this neutralizing method could have gone either way, like you either turn them both all the way up with giving them each other's powers, or you literally neutralize them by having like Donald Blake versus Bruce Banner, which probably wouldn't have been as exciting unless it was like the actual Donald Blake from Prey who had gone on a killing spree, and us getting him versus Bruce Banner from El Paso. Now that would have made an interesting matchup as well. But again with this one, there are much deeper layers that are going on here. And we see some of this unfold as Odin tells Banner to get them to Asgard. And of course Bruce is like, you know, how we gonna do that? The Rainbow Bridge is broken. And it's here where Odin tells Bruce that Thor has often held back the sheer scope of Mjolnir's power. And even with the Bifrost gone, Odin uses this power to get the Hulk and Thor back to Asgard. And as soon as they get there, we expand on this a bit more, because as the Hulk and Thor come crash landing on Asgard, and everyone there sees the Hulk wielding Mjolnir, and it's here where Tony says that Thor has barely beaten the Hulk with Mjolnir in the past. So how is he gonna do it now with the Hulk wielding Mjolnir if he's barely beaten him before? And right away it's here where Beta Ray Bill says that this is not true, because the Hulk has never fought Thor, not the real Thor. And with saying this, I like the way that Beta Ray Bill breaks this down, because he talks about in the past when they fought, the Hulk faced the Avenger, the humble Thor, the noble Thor, but now the Hulk faces not just a mirror of his own rage, but also a rage that has been held back for hundreds of years, because Thor's cast down to Midgard by Odin to learn humility, to learn honor, to learn how to wield his power with mercy. And really this makes me look back on Journey into Mystery issue 83 or Thor First Thunder, which before I've only looked at as different tellings of Thor learning humility and stories of quote unquote Odin vanquishing the pride of Thor's heart. But with the way that Beta Ray Bill expresses it here, like at the time Thor was learning how to show mercy, and in previous matches when Thor had fought the Hulk, Thor believed that there was someone inside of the Hulk that was a man or ally, someone worthy of forgiveness, someone worthy of mercy. But in this moment with Thor being truly unleashed, he doesn't see a man inside of the Hulk, all he sees is the beast, which is along the lines of what we heard Thor say before prior to his Gamma incident, But also this teases the idea of Thor going back to his more primal ways, and not just a case of Thor slipping into Warrior's madness, but I'd also say like a time where it's just Thor, back when visiting Midgard was just new to him. Kinda like what we'd seen in Thor Volume 5 Issue 7, where Thor would come to Earth, slay a troll, make some friends, and then step out to join a war between the Dark Elves and the Dwarves, to where Thor would fight for 40 years straight. And I'm talking gruesome fights. And he would just lose track of time, cutting off heads and all sorts of limbs. Which again, for Thor, that 40 years for him was just a let me step out and I'll be back kind of thing. No Warrior's madness, just young Thor dismembering any opponent who stepped in his way. And his hero Beta Ray Bill more or less schools Tony, and he tells him, well, if you don't think that Thor stands a chance against the Hulk, watch this. As they continue to fight, and Thor just tears off the Hulk's arm, with Thor not only showing that he's a god and a warrior, but also like Beta Ray Bill mentioned, Hulk is facing the mirror of his own rage, and that mirror just tore his arm off. But right after this, Odin tells Banner to push Thor towards Yggdrasil so that the World Tree can burn that madness out of Thor and get him back to the way that he was. And as soon as he knocks Thor into the World Tree, it starts to wrap around Thor and bind him up. And it's here where Odin starts to talk to Banner about the rage that fuels his Hulk, and how in Banner's case, he's found a way to cage his Hulk and use his rage as fuel instead of letting it control him. But in the case of Thor, he's not even close to having that level of control. And at this point, with Thor being bound to the World Tree, he's being held with the united power of every realm in the known and unknown universe, with all the voices of the elders whispering to him, guiding him back to the god that he is. And it's also here where Odin says that he doesn't think that this is gonna be enough. And once again, we're talking about the united power of every realm in the known and unknown universe. And Thor just breaks himself free of it. And from here, when Thor turns around and grabs the World Tree, I can't help but see this like a God of War rage moment. You know how Kratos be like, ah! Like, all I could think of was that game in this moment. Kratos with the full rage meter. I'm sorry. But matter of fact, if you know the words to the God of War theme, type them in the comments so that way I can practice. But with Thor grabbing the World Tree, grabbing Yggdrasil, like he's just gotta show what these new games is about to do. But with him grabbing the World Tree, he then breaks it from the root, snapping Yggdrasil like it was a Kit Kat. And with Thor doing this is no small feat, because the World Tree not only reaches throughout the 10 realms, but multiple times we've also seen references, and even in charts that showed us just the 9 realms, that the root system of Yggdrasil manifests itself on most of the other worlds, across various dimensional separate realms. So quite literally, Allbreaker Thor, I'm just gonna call him Allbreaker now, he's showing the capability of tearing reality apart. And Banner even calls it out by saying if we don't stop this guy, this is the end of reality. And with Banner seeing this, he tells Odin that we gotta talk this guy down. But also notice with Banner saying this is where we get our answer. Because when we saw earlier the Watcher mentioning who would win in a battle to the death between the Hulk and Thor, and really it's here where we find that the answer to that question is no one. Because it's here with Banner and Odin seeing what Thor is capable of with Banner's rage, as well as Odin recently being made aware of the new hulking issues that Banner is dealing with at the moment, and the both of them realize that if they let these two guys just fight unchecked, because Thor and Hulk have proven that they're both physically strong enough now to break reality, and Odin knows that no mortal being in the universe would survive that. And granted, in the case of the Hulk, it would take time for him to reach reality breaking levels, but nonetheless, the amount of destruction that would take place in the wake of this battle, all mortal life in countless realities would just cease to exist. And if everyone's dead and Hulked out Thor and Thored out Hulk just keep fighting, then who's the winner? And this is what Banner and Odin realize, because the Hulk could continue to combat Thor, one arm and everything, die and come back, and just go back and forth over and over again. But the cost of making that choice is too great. And it's here where Banner's like, no, we've got to talk this guy down. And Odin, he hears that and he's like, he just goes for it. And with him being inside of Banner's mind, he speaks through the Hulk to his son Thor, and Odin just opens up. He starts off telling Thor that he's sorry, and not just for Thor's troubles, but also for the part that Odin has played in it as well. And this is something that's been a long time coming. And recently we talked about some of this tension when we were getting into God of Hammers, but the broken relationship between Thor and Odin, it goes back so much further. Because Odin knew that someday Thor would be king, but no matter what Thor would do, it was like he could never do right in the eyes of Odin. And we got another example of this back in Thor Volume 5 when Jason Aaron had showed us a different example of how this had played out. Because at the time, before the Donald Blake lesson, Odin had a problem with Thor going to Midgard too much. And he chastised Thor, telling him he was neglecting his duties as the Prince of Asgard, while also telling Thor that he's the god of the storm, not the mud. And just as one example, it was like 1 minute Odin would think Thor was too humble, and the next moment he'd think Thor was not humble enough. And it was very rarely for Thor where he could remember a time where he could think of a good father-son moment, which is what we then later saw during God of Hammers, with Thor recently becoming king and beginning to look back on moments with his father when he then remembered that there were times when Odin did show him love. And it really feels like all of this has just been building up to this moment. And recently going into this with Odin making his way into Mjolnir, this started like Odin was gonna make the same mistakes again. But it's here where Odin realizes and admits that he had messed up. And what Thor really needs now is for an all-father to do what all fathers are supposed to do, and that's help their sons with their burdens. And it's here where Odin uses the magic within Mjolnir to remove the Gamma from Thor and restore the World Tree, which from there just causes this massive explosion that knocks everybody back. And afterwards, when we catch up with Tony, who's asking Thor about what happened, it's here where we find Thor tell Tony that only a god could survive being that close to the blast, and as a result, the Hulk's dead. And really with Tony hearing this, in his mind he knows that Thor's capping, but he doesn't go back and forth with Thor. Instead, Tony's just more or less like, wow, that's crazy. And he borrows Thor's goat so he can get back to Midgard. But we also find out with Odin using this blast from Mjolnir to restore Thor and repair the World Tree, that in the case of Banner, he restored the Starship Hulk and he just took off from there, continuing his travels much like we'd seen in issue 1. But also in this moment, we find out from Thor as he has a conversation with Sif, where Thor tells her the reason why he had lied to Tony, saying that Banner the Hulk is dead, because it's here where Sif asks Thor if he was sure about letting Banner go. And it's here where Thor expresses what I believe is the final layer of what this fight was showing us, because it's here where Thor says that Banner's not to blame for what happened in El Paso. And he also knows that Banner can't just go back to Earth just yet, because he tells Sif that he's lived behind Banner's eyes. He's felt his rage, he's felt his pain. And it's almost like with the both of these guys having each other's power, that they both got the opportunity to experience each other's struggle. And Thor lets Sif know that he's learned through this experience that he now realizes that he shares more in common with the Hulk than he would wish. And I'm sure a lot of it for the both of them is centered around daddy issues. But with Thor learning this and him and Banner really just looking at each other before Banner left, it kind of gives us the indication that Banner had learned a bit about Thor too. But with Banner leaving and going off into his interdimensional travels, we also get another indication that these lessons are not over. Because back on Asgard, we see the Hulk's Thor armor right next to the Destroyer, and with a delivery that kind of feels like a Marvel mid-credit scene, we then see the eyes of the Titan Hulk light up inside of his armor, which from there ends Banner of War, but it also lets us know that the solution that Odin came to fix Banner's problem with the Titan Hulk, that now it's a problem that's just sitting dormant on Asgard. And I use the word dormant loosely, because the Titan Hulk, he can just pop off any day. Who knows when that's gonna happen? And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.